They came from small towns and sprawling cities. Some drove trucks and listened to the radio too loud. Others were soft-spoken and shy. They bathed in lakes and fished in rivers and listened to stories of the war, and the war before, and the war before, and the war before. And when they vowed to protect America from all enemies with eyes shining bright, they meant it. They danced and they prayed and went to church on Sunday. And on soil far from home they fought, in the rain and the bitter cold, in unforgiving heat and on oceans so deep. They did all of these things and more, but they never got to grow old. They lost the time it would have taken for bones to grow brittle and joints to dry up and ache. And we remember them, brave and too loud, quiet and resolute, eyes shining bright. We remember their stories so full of promise, love, and humor. We remember them because they were our sons and our brothers, our fathers, and our sisters. They were our friends, and we carry their legacy in every privilege we hold dear in this country we call home. Their sacrifice made way for our blessing. Their courage forged our future. We honor them, these brave men and women who came from small towns and sprawling cities, heroes, each and every one.
Welcome in, friends. It is another episode of the Revved Up Sports Show on your Monday as we dive in talking racing. And Bobby, I think it's very important that we open the show that way because obviously we're doing this on Monday. And, there's a lot of stuff, when you talk about Happy Memorial Day, all of these different things and so forth and so on. I mean, this is not, it's a happy day for most of us. But when you look at something like that, that's what you need to be thinking about today, because that's what this whole weekend and this whole not celebration, but to me, remembrance. That's what it's all about this weekend.
Yeah, I think so. It's not a day about barbecues and beer and floating down the river and stuff like that. It's supposed to be a solemn holiday, right? You're not supposed to be celebrating Memorial Day. You're supposed to be celebrating the memory and the lives of those lost to protect the freedoms that we have. Put your political opinions aside and all of that. When it comes down to respecting and honoring the men and women that have, given their all, the ultimate sacrifice to this nation, that's where we have the privilege to be able to do shows like this, be able to do the Indianapolis 500, the Coke 600, all because of the sacrifice they gave to give us the freedom to choose what we want to do on a day dedicated to them, like Memorial Day.
That's right. And the good thing about, there's lots of good things about our sport, but I am very proud that, even at times our sport embarrasses me. I'll say that. We talk about it all the time here, but it's like weekends like this to where I see the sport come together and really honor what's important. I mean, we had, the Triple Crown Throwdown. We can talk about that, a two-day show there in Corpus, and then Heart of Texas. That's just here in the local area. But you had local stuff happening all around. And the whole thing it was all about honoring those folks and their families and the ultimate sacrifice. Because, Bobby, I love to say this at the racetrack when it's like, you get the race car drivers out there and the different folks, and it's like, okay, here's the star. Yeah, they're a star, but when it comes to being a hero, the heroes are the ones that we're talking about this weekend that need to be recognized.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. They're the ultimate heroes with the ultimate sacrifice. There's no other way to describe an American patriot, by no other way about it. It takes a special individual. It's like I always said, I never followed my dad into firefighting because I told a couple of chiefs and captains at a reunion one time, they said, how come you're not a firefighter? I said, because it takes a special individual to run your ass into a burning building to try to save people that you don't know.
Yep.
It's also the same way I feel about the military. It takes a special person to sign on the dotted line to put your ass in the line of fire to protect the freedoms for all of us that we often take for granted. So kudos to those. We get to see a lot of the at the UTSA football game, especially military appreciation down in, Military City, USA in San Antonio. Lots and lots of enlistment ceremonies happen throughout the football season there at the Alamo Dome. So it's always cool to see it come full circle when you have a moment like Memorial Day, and then you get to see the next group stepping up, taking that oath, and taking on that challenge of freedom. So it's pretty cool when you see, and we should be more grateful and thankful to those people than we probably are.
Oh man, and we joke about it all the time here on the show about different things. Talking about being voluntold to do things and so forth. I mean, you go back and you look at like that piece was saying right there. I mean, with wars. I mean, with the wars of the past, and it's going to be wars to come. I mean, whatever the case is going to be right there. That's a volunteer thing. At one point there was the draft and all of that where you really didn't have a choice. I mean, you could find ways to get out of that or whatever the case may be. But, for a lot of folks, I mean, like my dad, for example, with Vietnam, I mean, he knew that coming out of high school, I mean, whatever path that he wanted to take, he knew his path was going to be going to the military and serving for the country. And there are so many folks that we go back and you have those conversations, and it's we're some lucky son of a bitches around here because like I said, I mean, it's they choose to do that. They choose to do that, and with a lot of things wrong around here, like you mentioned, it's really cool that that those folks get honored this weekend.
Yeah, no, it's pretty. It's Memorial Day is always fun. Labor Day is about having a good time, but Memorial Day needs to be more about remembrance. There needs to be a lot more moment of silence. That's why I love the sport, right? And you notice when we say we love the sport, we didn't say, oh, we love NASCAR, oh, we love IndyCar. We love what the sport of motorsports did on Sunday. The introductions, the playing of the taps, the 21 gun salutes, all of that really cool stuff that we as announcers and people that have to coordinate stuff like that love watching and love being a part of. But the way that the sport handled it, I mean, couldn't be a better way to do it, man. Awesome. Yep. Awesome to see it every year, top notch, and it's just badass.
Yeah, and that's where and we talk about NASCAR. So on the show, we'll talk about Indy and NASCAR and all of that. I mean, with Larson and the way the 500 ends up, and then the way the 600 ends up. But we do want to touch on local and talk about some of the big shows that we had around here, and just not touch on. This is one of those shows to where this is very much going to be. I mean, on Memorial Day, yeah, we love to schedule guests and bring them in, and we've got folks that are on deck that are going to be really great guests that we'll have on, as we go into the summer. But we kind of like with Memorial Day to kind of just keep it between talking about this, the really important stuff, and talking about racing and interacting, with our friends that are checking in on all the various different, platforms that we're on, because that's a cool part about this, because it's a celebration of the sport that we love. But again, this is where, like you're mentioning right there, Bobby, some of the stuff that I saw on the Indy coverage yesterday, man, it was like they were really honing in on the true, the 500 is what it is, to me, the greatest race of them all. But they were really honing in on the Memorial Day aspect to it. And NASCAR, say what you want to say about them. I mean, I had a guy that I was talking to last week, and he's like, well, you know why they do that? Well, they have to stop anyway to do the stage break. I'm like, don't come at me with that. They don't turn the cars off. They don't do everything that they do. And it's always that negative thing. And it gets more frustrating to me when it happens with this cluster of races that we just went through on the mainstream side, to where it's like, come on, just enjoy it for what it is and celebrate it and remember what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. The negative Nancy's and the boo birds are always going to be there. I mean, I was one of the ones. We'll talk about it more. I was the first one to bitch at the Coca-Cola 374. Barely happened, right? I mean, I was upset that they called it so damn early when it's a holiday, and I'll get into more of that later. My hot take on that, but on the Coke 600 being called early. But I think the way that Indy handled the delay was great, because they still did all of the pomp and circumstance, surrounding the Indianapolis 500. And I think that was great to see, because a lot of times you'll see, every race is important, but your crown jewel races have a tendency to continue tradition. We've been to races before where they canceled driver introductions because of the rain, and they went directly into the cars when it, uncovered them and went straight into racing, right? Indianapolis 500 ended up being delayed by a monsoon that everybody knew was coming. And they still did all the pomp and circumstance, even did the back home again in Indiana with the Purdue marching band. So that's, while I'm not from Indiana, I can appreciate the state pride of the Hoosiers by wanting to hear back home again in Indiana. So.
Well, and you had, and you gotta, this is one of those things to where it was very evident because, and this kind of correlates back to the Charlotte thing, to where it's like with the weather question. This was very evident, and Lord knows that we all know how you're putting the basis of your event. You're putting it in the hands of the weather guessers, and I've got a lot of friends of mine that are legitimate weather guessers, and that's what they're doing. They're trying to figure out what's going to happen right there. But for Indy to be able to do what they did when they got everybody out of there, although some people didn't leave, which is not surprising. They went and Bobby, they went and got right under the covered thing. I'm like, shit, I think I'd have gone to the parking lot and been in the wide open rather than, amongst all the aluminum and all that. But then the coolest part for me was in a day where we go back and we question the intent and we question the true race fan, the true fandom. I think I put this on X yesterday, to where what I saw yesterday at Indianapolis, those people all came back, dude. And the thing is, there was a plan set up. I don't know how, and I would love to see some behind the scenes video, how the hell they maneuvered those people out of there and back in there. Because when the coverage came back live, it was like they never left, dude. It was just jam packed in there all around that joint.
Even the snake pit filled back up, man, down there in the turn. It's crazy to think that they have that huge concert down in the infield of Indianapolis in the middle of the Indy 500. Similar, I guess, to kind of what Coda does with their guests, their musical guests, but to run at the exact same time. Don't get me wrong, Indy cars ain't loud. They're not super loud. You can carry on a conversation, not like the pushrod V8s that still exist in NASCAR, hopefully for a little bit longer before they go to twin turbo V6s and everybody loses their damn mind. It's just it's just that we remember the great races they had at TMS. It's just so and to touch back on that NASCAR thing, we touched on it last week about the new manufacturers coming in but won't come in without a pushrod V8.
Yeah,
everybody thought Formula One was dead when they got rid of the V12s. Yes, it sounded better. Yes, it's an iconic sound that'll never be replaced by the new motors. Formula One did all right after they switched up their engine plans.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Yeah, they did. I think they did. I think they did. We'll dive into that and IndyCar. But before, I know we got a lot of folks on the Texas sites that are, they want to talk about everything that we just had. Triple Crown Throwdown. And again, the show presented by On Demand Shirts. Those are the folks that will take care of you. We're sporting our great gear right here. I'm all thrown around. There it is right there. On Demand Shirts. Bobby's looking good over there. Rogers Dab Chevrolet, GM Performance, all your great stuff right there. Generation Race Cars, and man, we're just so proud to be partnered up with all of those folks. Sabine Arclatex Boot Hill. Here we go, way up north, right there into Louisiana, as they say. Dalton Faulkner and Chris Hennigan, man, they almost in the factory stocks and the limited modifieds, USRA limited modifieds. Is that USRA, I guess, over there? Mm-hmm. They almost, but not quite able to make it happen. But so many cars. The power of dirt track racing up in the northern parts of North Texas into Louisiana and Mississippi.
It's just amazing. The car count never fails to amaze me when they come into these high dollar, big multi-day shows. The King of the Hill is one thing at $10,000. But as far as some of the the Triple Crown Throwdown, the car count for that 3 days, and the guys committed to running all 3 days is amazing when you think about the car count and the participation that you have with those three. Obviously, those two guys, Faulkner's at another level this time around. He's always been damn good in a factory stock, but it feels like he's at a different level. When you're able to go in and beat the caliber of guys he's been beating back to back, as many big races he's been to and be able to come out on top. That's big. And then you got Hennigan doing it again. He's the trendsetter up there. in that Arklatex region in terms of somebody who's a bona fide certified ass kicker up there. So he's done a lot to back up. What is it? The Kid Rock we always joke about. It ain't cocky if you back it up, right? I mean, that's the way it is.
I think one of the things that we're going to be following here as we start diving into the summertime right now, that you mentioned factory stocks right there. You've got the tire change, and that's the funny thing where I've seen a lot of conversation about the tires and everything that's going on right there. And this is where I'm going to kind of say something that may be unpopular for folks, because it's like, the F45. The Hoosier F45. And now with the S1 and the S2, where Hoosier has stopped making the S45. And, some of the factory stock folks around these parts are like, well, that is not a tire that's intended for you. That is an asphalt tire. And I know that a lot of folks go out and they're dealers, whatever it takes to be a dealer with that. I think a dealer, you just go out and buy a bulk of them, and you go out there and sell them at a very good price or whatever's happening right there. But this is, Bobby, where I think it's going to get real interesting for the factory stock folks, because the F45s are about to go away, and at some point you're going to have that transition to the new Hoosier tire. And this is where I go, like I just said, I mean, these tires are not intended for you. These are pavement tires. And that's where you go back to the KK, whatever numbers they are. Is that going to be something right there to where that tire bill is going to go up? I think it's going to get a little interesting right now with that tire thing with these factory stocks.
Well, it's just a matter of time before your options are limited. When they went to the KK 704 tire, I don't think that experiment worked, at least to the extent they thought, because the guys, the allure of having a cheap ass tire bill on a car that cost anywhere from $10,000 to $35,000 just never made any sense to me. Oh, well, the tires are $25 a piece. Well, you just spent $20,000 on your car. I guess you have no budget left to buy the full blown dirt tires, right? So that the ecosystem is going to be unique when you come to find out what's going to be the next generation of tires for factory stock. Our East Coast friends and some of our West Coast friends have no idea what a mid-central factory stock is. I mean, it's basically a modern day stock car. It's got factory components, but a lot of racing components on it too, where it's not like a CRA. It's not like a dirt CRA street stock. It's its own unique animal that it was originated up in the Arklatex region, which is why it's so strong up there, and migrated to South Texas, East Texas, North Texas, and into Oklahoma. So it's it's its own unique ecosystem, and the fact that they're going to have to switch to the new Hoosier style late model tires is going to be a challenge for those guys. It'll be the next guys to try to figure it out in terms of, what's the magic number going to be in terms of air pressures and stuff like that. I'm going to wait and see which guys figure it out first, but we got a long way to go. There's still a pretty good inventory of those. It's when we come to big show season is where that question is going to come up.
Which that should kind of correlate right there once we get to November, December, all of that. I mean, I think that's when that the stock of F45s is about to dwindle. And I've talked to a lot of folks, and obviously Hoosier is doing this. Hoosier did this because of the pressure of, the American Racer tire is look, I work with folks at Hoosier. I work with folks at American Racer. But the American Racer was kicking their ass when it came to
durability, longevity.
Yeah. It was a better tire. I mean, you would watch super races to where you would watch those guys and they got better. I mean, they would go through the heat cycles and all of these different things a lot better than what that tire was doing at that point. So that's where Hoosier and their folks decided, let's figure out what we're going to do. And the monkey wrench, I think, that they threw into the folks that are buying the cheaper tires that want to race them on dirt is the S1 and S2. Different compounds for right and left. And again, you buy them that way, but kind of the caveat to all of that is I've talked to race teams along the Gulf Coast in Florida and Georgia and different, and they're like, all these guys that want to buy our tires and take them back to Texas and take them back to Louisiana and Mississippi. I think maybe we ought to quit selling them so cheap. And that's where
that I've never understood, right? It's the simple law of supply and demand. They sell those used tires cheap because to them, they're useless. They're just trying to get them out of the way.
They throw them away, Bobby. You go to the fucking snowball derby. I mean, they get over there and they go out and run 10 laps. Boom, get rid of these. Go turn them back in. And I think they're finally starting to figure out that, I mean, this tire that I paid X amount for, I mean, maybe I sell it for half price, because these folks are going to go out and run it for 6 or 7 weeks or however long they're going to run it. So I think this is something that's going to radically change us up. And I'm not beating up the Triple Crown Throwdown. I'm just kind of pointing out the obvious here, that this is about to change up a little bit.
Well, it's bound to. And it's just surprising that they hadn't raised the price of the tires in like 5 years that they've been running factory stocks over there. They're like, yeah, let's just get rid of these old bricks. We don't need them anymore. And then you see certain guys show up with a boatload of tires, 50, 60 tires. Hey, I got a trailer full of pull-offs. Come get them. $45 a piece, $50 a piece, whatever the case may be. I think the days of a $50 factory stock tire is few and far between now. I think with these new Hoosiers, I think they're going to go up to about $75 a tire. You're going to have to pay more for them wholesale wise to pick them up from the super late model teams, but you're going to have to pay more for them to the end user because you don't want your profit margins to change.
And that's where I'm curious to see, because that's going to be the alternative right there, is going to be a racing tire. 75 versus whatever they cost. I mean, I have no idea. I haven't
minimum of 100, probably a minimum of 130.
It's more than that. I mean, and the other thing with that is, I mean, for the asphalt teams, I mean, they're going out and they're dropping. I mean, you go to Houston, and a lot of folks have talked about, and again, Houston in action this Saturday, June the 1st, but you won't have the modifieds or the pro trucks. And one of the things that I've talked to with those guys is where it gets so hard for them to race. I mean, the tire bill. The tire bill is very expensive. But again, asphalt is very different, to where they go through those tires like we go through aluminum cans of beer, to where it's like, done with this one. Time to go get another one. But I think for the asphalt teams, like we're talking about, that's where they have the alternative towards like, okay, I'm going to get rid of this shit and I'm going to sell it to these guys that are going to go off and use this. But it's up. Inflation, my man. Inflation is about to set in, and I'm not here to rain on anybody's party, but be prepared to spend more money. And maybe we see a change in performance. But the thing about it is, Bobby, you're going to go out and you're going to buy S1s and S2s, and whatever they're going to cost, you're only going to be faster because it's a better tire.
Crazy how much faster the factory stock could be,
isn't it? I mean, that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing, to where that's going to be the thing, to where they're really going to be ripping up around here.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to supply and demand towards the end of the year. That's why the pretty girls at the strip club cost more, right? It's the ugly ones that are cheaper, but the dances last a little longer, right? I mean, so it just depends on how it's going to shake out. Supply and demand. It's always been that way about racing tires. It's always been about supply and demand. A couple of years ago, when the pandemic couldn't keep up with tires, we saw major racing events canceled because there wasn't enough tires to go around. We saw tires falling apart after 15 laps because they didn't cure long enough. I mean, so it's always been about supply and demand with tires. But I don't know, man. I think come big show season, it is going to be such a unique time. You're still gonna have the guys on the Hoosiers. You're gonna have the guys on the S1s and S2s. You have guys on the F45s. You have guys on the American Racers. It's just going to be the first guy to figure it out, or the guy that figures it out the best, is going to be the one that's going to be kicking ass.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, I mean, that some of these guys, I mean, they're going to spend that extra money. They're going to go in and they're going to pay for those, and they're going to be the ones that will excel and do all of that. So, yeah, no doubt. Martha checking in. Miss Martha, how are you doing? Hope all is well. Our man Bruce Wright checking in from North Texas. Bruce, I hope the weather is treating you, because it's supposed to be another gruesome weather weekend, I saw in various parts of Texas.
Yeah, North Texas got hammered a couple of days ago, and it looks like they're going to get hammered again.
My man, Alan Alexander, he goes there at noon. He goes at lunchtime, I'm sure, is what he's talking about right there. He goes for the Towel City retreads, Bobby, is
That's
what.
Right. Steak and fries, $5.99.
That's exactly
that's what it used to be. I hadn't been in a long time, so it could be like $7.99 now, due to inflation and different kind of city codes you got to pay for now.
Yeah, that's right. We saw in Texas, we saw the All-Star Tour kind of change up the dates right there based on weather again. But I do want to touch on, Bobby, Heart of Texas Speedway, 186 cars through the turnstiles there at Hot. So looked like a good night. 46 sport mods, Southern sport mods as they call them. So big night there at Heart of Texas Speedway. I saw some folks, and again, ripping the promoter about the track. That place has been underwater for about a week and a half, I think. But it seemed like there were a lot of people out there, a lot of cars, and a good night there for them. And the other thing, touch on that. Your thoughts on that? I mean, Selby and them, it's like, wow, there are a lot of ruts. And
I mean, it was a little more rutting than normal. When you have as many cars that flipped over as they did, I can understand why some of the general public. The problem is all the people that are talking shit about the cars flipping over weren't the ones that were in the grandstands. As normal, somebody that's not at a racetrack is sitting behind a keyboard pissing and moaning about something that they had no control over.
yeah,
As much rain as they got in Waco and in that general vicinity there at Heart of Texas Speedway, the fact that track is still somewhat on a competitive racing level with the goalie washers and stuff they've been having going through there lately. I think they've had 5 rainouts in a row, something like that, due to storms that basically just washed the place out. So sure, it's what did the dirt drivers tell us when we interview them when they win? This place has character. Hey, on a big show, there's a chance that track will have character, and it did. And even in the hot summer, when they come down to the Labor Day and the Fall Classic, there'll probably be little ruts and a little character then too, because of all the cars. 186 cars aren't going to help that track surface any. The little ruts turn into big ruts when you have that many cars. So it's out of the track's control to a certain extent. But some of the keyboard warriors pissed off like normal, which is not a surprise. It's the same people that we see all the time that are the ones that say they're never going to watch NASCAR, but every week they have a take on it. So.
And I think the alternative was there for Waco, because I was kind of following along in Corpus, and it was like I saw an update at noon, I saw an update at 2. So for the folks that are pissed off about the track surface and the whatever happened out there, and again, I'm kind of out of the loop on some stuff, just getting back today, but it's like the alternative is they could have canceled. They could have postponed that show. They could have wiped that out, and then you'd be pissed off still because it didn't rain there yesterday. And you're not thinking about the fact that they had to go in there and try to cure that racetrack and try to get it back in shape from everything that happened on Saturday, because Saturday night into Sunday morning, it was Katie barred the door. They got hammered again. And that's the part where I wish folks would just kind of take a step back and be like, okay, which would be better? A track that is, and again, I mean, for the guys that flipped, I think there were 2 flips and the surface was not the best. So would you rather have that, or would you rather have that they didn't race at all and that you didn't get anything on Sunday? Pick your poison is kind of my thought with that.
Well, one of the guys that flipped apparently ran the B main and finished well enough to make the A main.
Exactly.
A little bit of tape and some other stuff. It was I guess if you could call it a soft roll from the footage that we saw, or footage that I saw. Yeah. Looked like it was as soft of a roll as you could hit. I think he went just barrel rolled and only barrel rolled once.
Yeah.
Landing back on all fours pretty quickly. So I just think that it's it just comes down to the simple fact of it's the promoter versus the weather, and the promoter versus the guy that doesn't show up. Yeah. We talk about all the time, the most expensive seat at a racetrack is the empty one, but now it seems like the most expensive seat at a racetrack is the guy that's behind the keyboard, because for every one person that bitches, there's 2 people that believe it and won't go.
That's right. Yeah, the folks looking from the outdoor, from outside the box, I mean, they see that, and I'm like, and they're like, I ain't going there. Are you kidding? Why would I want to go to that place? It sounds like a shit show. I mean, there's no reason to go there. But Bobby, I'll tell you one place that is not an S show is Cotton Bowl Speedway. And they're getting back after it. Coming up on June the 8th, it'll be the American Crate Late Model Series, the Southern Division, heading to the speed plant right there at Cotton Bowl Speedway. 3/8 of a mile, high banked, long straightaways, kind of a paper clip right there. If you haven't checked it out, Cotton Bowl Speedway on Facebook, and they're going to have all of their regular divisions going at it, and then the late model action, racecbs.com. Check this out. They are supporters of this program. And Bobby, never a bad time to go to Cotton Bowl. I was talking to some folks this weekend, and we were talking at the Turn 5 bar there at the race ranch, and we were talking about the different tracks in Texas. And this person specifically said, man, Marianne and H don't have a problem getting cars there, do they? Or do they have a problem getting folks in the stands? They really don't. They have a loyal fan base and driver support system there, and they're going to be rocking there on June 8th.
Yeah, the late model show put on a really good race. Those crate late models, their number one thing is they got to have momentum to
Yep.
make passes and to continue to keep up their RPMs and stuff like that. Should not be. I mean, if you're going to lose momentum at Cotton Bowl, it's going to suck. But those big old wide turns, wide flipping open WFO, they're at Cotton Bowl for the late models, whether crate late model or not. They'll be flying around them high banks.
Absolutely. June the 8th, check them out on Facebook, Cotton Bowl Speedway and racecbs.com. You'll enjoy going out there. You really will. That is a great facility, and those folks do a really, really good job. Travis will answer that question here in just a minute when we start talking about Houston. The other thing I did want to touch on, Bobby, when it came to dirt track racing this weekend, obviously I was at Corpus there and sprint cars, the 305s. It was the 305 sprints there. It was 12 and 12. So you had that was the car count there both nights there at the race ranch. You had 17 over at Waco last night. So when we were talking last week about the 305s kind of being that launch pad and kind of being a place to where in Texas to where the 305 can really make an impact, a lot of the folks, I can tell you a lot of folks in Corpus, I never said 305. I never said race saver. I never said any of that. I just said wing sprint cars, and those people were going batshit crazy. They loved what they saw. Nobody said there's only 12. Well, somebody did, but it was the track operator. Nobody in the crowd said there's only 12 because the racing was great. I mean, you had Thomas Johnson, Trey Schmidt, they win. Jeb Sessoms last night at Waco. 305s. 305s is that little hidden pill, dude, that I think is really going to blow sprint car racing up around here.
Well, let's hope. I mean, there's a gap that some people had negative things to say about the old Southern United Sprint Car Series that Randy Waller and them ran.
Yeah.
But they filled a gap, that a much needed gap when it comes to sprint car racing in South and Central Texas and even East Texas as well. When that series kind of popped up and said that they weren't running there in 2024, that put a dent in sprint cars for sure. So there's a lot of tracks that's trying to fill in the gaps, trying to get the sprint car world in there. And like Chris told us last week, it's a cost-effective way to run a 305 show. And the people that show up just to see sprint cars, unless you're an elitist sprint car guy, you're not going to give a shit if it's a 305, a 360, or 410. You're just there to watch a sprint car run around your racetrack.
Yeah, and I think one of the things from talking to the sprint car guys this weekend in Corpus was what they were mentioning is the fact that those cars are very much equal. I mean, I can tell you in Corpus, of the 12 cars that we had, there were probably 8 of them that were very capable of winning that race just in performance and the different things that they were doing right there. A lot of that comes down to track prep. Very good racetrack in Corpus. I know that Waco may have had issues or whatever, but I didn't hear anything about anything during the sprint car race. But the fact is, I think with the 305 that it comes down to a little bit more where with depending the region, kind of depending on the track with factory stocks, and even to a certain extent with limited modifieds and sport mods, to where it comes down to the loose nut behind the wheel, like we talk about, to where it comes down to those guys. And I think the 305 really presents itself to where it comes down to the driver, and it comes down to adapting to the track and adjustments and all of that. And that's where, because I know with the 410s and 360s, man, that's just like you said. I mean, that's just, it's all, you tighten up that crotch belt and just go. 305s, man, you got to kind of work them like a pro late model on asphalt. You got to kind of work that thing a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you could just you can just go balls out in a 360 and a 410 because you have to. I mean, you definitely have to with those machines, especially the 410s. But I mean, you're right. You got to go elbows up in a 305. It doesn't mean that they're any less fun to drive. Doesn't mean they're any less fun to watch. They just, sometimes you actually see. I mean, we've seen it before, to where you've had a 305 race competitively with the 360, depending on the racetrack and the team's ability to set it up. So, don't dog the 305s. I mean, they are a special, it is a special place to get a niche. Chris Walters nailed it. That is my stepping stone. They go from 305s into my 360s, then my 360 touring series, then my 410 touring series, and my 410 national touring series. It's right there where you got to be. There's got to be, and I don't want to say, I mean, calling it entry level is kind of unfair because of the fact that that's an expensive ass entry level class. Not everybody starts out in a sprint car, right? They'll go from a a micro sprint up to that, or run a late model or something like that. But it is no doubt it is the entry level to the bigger ecosystem of the scheme of the pyramid when it comes to sprint car racing. You got to have it. It's like an upside down pyramid with racing. You got that slow burn point down at the bottom, and then it gets a little bit bigger as it goes up to your opportunities as you get to a bigger car. So
yeah, and I think the thing about with the 305s, because just Corpus, for example, I mean that's all that I can speak of, firsthand. You mentioned Randy Waller right there. Randy wasn't racing in the series; he just ran. That Southern the SUS. He just ran that. Teresa was the one that was actually driving at that point, the principal, as we like to say. Randy's now behind the wheel. And, that's a 63, 4, 5-year-old rookie in a 305 sprint car. Then you got Trent Dixon, Brad's young dude out there. And it's a really good mix with Schmidt and some of these guys. Jeb Sessoms is a guy to where it's like, with Schmidt, that's a dude out of Houston, to where he and Thomas Johnson, they're guys that they seem to be very content in the 305s, ready to get to a 360 or a 410, if that presented itself. But like with Randy Waller and some of the Kent Lewis Sr., I mean, these are guys that 305 is perfect for them. And I think the 305 to me is very much one of those classes to where we see it on the asphalt side, to where it's like it's a variation, where it can be something to where it's like you're winding your career down, you're finding a spot to where you can continue to race while your family's growing, and when you don't have all of that money coming in, or you're a kid that wants to learn how to race sprint cars. Maverick, the guy that won on Friday, it didn't work out for him in Tech. Young dude had never raced a sprint car or very limited sprint car experience, and he was balls out all weekend. And I like the 305. It's just a really good spot that will bring people in to see sprint cars.
Well, that's what it's for. I mean, it is a building block to entertain fans. You can say, hey, look, okay, well, what is it? This is a 305. Come see the 360 show in a couple of weeks. That's the perfect way to describe it, in terms of no different than a pro late model, a super late model, and I mean, I guess you could say ARCA, but I guess depending on where you're at, the super late model is the top rung on the ladder. So
mm-hmm.
I guess maybe ASA now would be, ASA would be a way to look at it. So
yeah, kind of my thought with 305s. I think if you could really get into something, and I know that there are different variations of the 305s, and this is where I like what Chris is doing, and kind of what's happening with Crate Racing USA up on the northern part of Texas, is that you have the sanction right there from Crate Racing USA with the late models. I really think that if you could pull something together where you had some type of a traveling thing to where on a big race night, a couple of where you would have a factory stock, a limited modified, some late models and sprint cars, maybe the trucks, you sprinkle them in down south. You have a show like that. I think that would be something really cool for dirt track racing fans and for the folks that stream it, to be able to see something like that for the variety, because we're kind of getting to the point again when it comes to racing in Texas, in my opinion, dirt track racing, to where with E-mods and all the different E-mods, I know in Corpus are just blowing it out of the water. 22 cars on Saturday, 23 on Sunday. And again, that's just a different variation right there, but you're starting to get to the same thing again. I know the E-mods and so forth, they take the tops off and the different things, but it's like, yeah, let's late models, some sort of sprint car, a factory stock or an IMCA stock car, sprinkle in some modified, some stems and all that. And that's where I think you could really do some good seasonal shows during the season before the big shows.
Yeah, or there's the chance you can run them both, right? We've seen them both kind of tie up together, where you get the best of both, where you get some late models and some sprint cars racing together, and that's that makes for one hell of a show, makes for a big weekend. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep, no doubt. Speaking of fun, Bobby, I do want to touch on you guys coming up on Friday. It is Texana Raceway Park, one of the coolest hidden gems that you're going to find in the state of Texas or anywhere. To be honest with you, I went to Jackson Motor Speedway last year in Mississippi, and it kind of had that Texana feel, where it's like you're driving along and it's like, okay, where is this place? And you take this little back road and you kind of go through the bumps and boom, there it is. Texana with the trucks. I think it's going to be a good weekend for you guys.
Should be a good weekend down there for sure. As long as I can remember the right date this time. Instead of we are indeed racing on the 31st. It's going to be a doubleheader for me, being Texana there on Friday night, and then go into the Palace of Power there on Saturday. So I've got to get geared up for a doubleheader weekend. Hadn't done a doubleheader weekend in a long time.
I just did it, dude,
So
and
it's a lot.
Luckily, it was in the same spot, but I ran a lot of stairs. But great weekend out there in Corpus. All right, so let's talk about Houston coming up. So I do want to kind of go back here. Obviously, you saw the change last week that there's going to be the Crown Vic class, the back in for folks around here, the old Thunderstock. Yes, they will be running all season long. I mean, and this is a tough one. I know a lot of folks. I've talked to a lot of folks who are like, well, why did it happen in the middle of the year? It's like, well, do you want it there or not is kind of the thing. And I know I've talked to some folks, or maybe some of these are sitting around, drag them out, bring them out. I mean, there's dirt tracks. Some of the Mobile guys want to come out. If you're in Mobile and you're watching this on whatever streaming source, if you want to drag it over here. I guarantee you they're going to get you on the track. I do think that this is something that if the stock car class can streamline, that could bring kind of that old feel back somewhat.
I mean, it's a class that is proven to work all over the country. The Cop stock, Crown Vic stock, whatever you want to call the class, it's the same thing. Just old police cars running together. We see them. They run a really competitive show there at Salem, up on the high banks there at Salem and Salem Speedway up there. So to see them at Houston, I think that it's the great. We saw how much fun they used to run at Kyle at Central Texas Speedway Thunderhill back in the iterations of those days before that track closed down. So they have the ability to put in. I think it's the perfect cost effective, because if I say entry level to about one of Owen's racetracks, I'll give my hand slap for sure, right? But it is one of the most cost effective ways to go from the seat in the aluminum grandstands to the seat in the aluminum race car.
Yeah, no doubt. Kalen Koch, yes, absolutely. Sprint cars at HMP.
October.
October. Chris Walters on here last week dropped that, so we can run with that. So that will be happening. So be ready for that. I think that's going to be a really cool thing there. And again, this is where, and here's what I'm looking forward to, that one is where the intent with the schedule coming out in November for the HMP Oval Track for Houston Motorsports Park was for them for it to come out and for folks to be ready. I mean, for them to have time to figure out if you were going to be a bootlegger or if you were going to be whatever the case was, a factory stock. That kind of came about later. Well, I mean, honestly, neither one of those is producing at all. And so that's why I saw some conversation on Lone Star Speed Zone to where it's like, oh, what's the name change all about? Well, the name change is, and like I posted on there, I got tired of saying a bootlegger is this, a factory stock is this. Let's call them what they are. They're at HMP and they're stock cars. That's what this is. So I think that's what's happened right there. But here's what I'm really envisioning, Bobby, to kind of thinking back to the old times and thinking about tracks around the country, especially up in the Northeast, to where you've got the four cylinders, you've got the Ecos, then you've got or Crown Vic, whatever you're going to call it. You got a stock car, then you're going to have a truck, and then whatever variation of outlaw that you're going to have. To me, that is a perfect scenario that you could have at an asphalt track right now.
Well, as long as the cars show up, anytime is a perfect scenario for race cars, right? I mean, that's the sad part is when you got the two premier classes only popping up with 4 or 5 cars. I mean, they need a week. They need an off weekend to try to figure out a kind of a reset button in a way to get their shows in order and get their programs up in order. I mean, don't be wrong. The Legacies cars have been putting on some great racing. The Legend car racing has been outstanding. EcoStock's not far behind it. So, I mean, it's some of the, we get that inflation's there and all of that, but it's like your more cost-effective classes or the, I don't want to say cheaper classes, because that's not right either. Your cost-effective classes, I mean, racing's expensive as hell anywhere, but those are the classes that have delivered And they've got the dirt guys saying it's because they're on pavement and stuff like that. But Houston's put on good races before in the past, great side by side racing. So I think that it's a good weekend to showcase the raceability, the drivability, and the fun that some of the classes that don't get all the fun fare and the high dollar purses that the trucks and the modifieds do. You get a chance to showcase those classes and what they can do and some of the great racing they can have.
It is. It's very much going to be an old school show. And I think that, I mean, we're starting to see it. I know Mobile, they've kind of changed their schedule up a little bit with what they're doing. Next week, definitely want to talk to Brian Benedict and have him on here because that is one of the most accomplished racers. I mean, I know that right now, with what he's doing in Legacies, but when you really look at this dude's 30-year career of what he's done, I mean, he's going to drop some stuff on us that people will have no idea that he's done. But kind of did some messaging with him over the weekend, and he said, look, Mobile has figured out that they have an abundance of legacy cars, and they're seeing what's happening in Texas, and that the Texas guys are coming over, and even Tim Bryant and those folks in Pensacola, they're kind of seeing that, and it's like, maybe we add this, and that's the thing that we're noticing here in Houston is that it is those divisions, and I really think that if the outlaw thing could really get some grip. We've had this discussion in the past to where it's like, I want a USA or UAR race or a Southern Super Series race. Nope. And you don't need a pro late model race. Let's have a big outlaw race. Start there and then start building. And I think the thing is and I hate saying support classes because right now they're supporting the track. They are the only ones supporting the track. I think that with those, the abundance of those that you have, man, I think that could build a really good show. And isn't it weird that you would have this massive show in Texas where the modifieds and the trucks might be on the sidelines because they're not able to make it out?
It's possible. I mean, and it could be more than likely going to happen.
Yeah.
I hope so. I mean, I'm not pulling a double to watch some boring ass racing.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Villarreal checks in here. Our man Dennis, E-Mods at HMP. When the pro mods, well, I mean, Bobby, you can speak to this. I mean, this is one of those things. And again, this is where it's so hard to try to do this right now in the middle of the year, like to do a limited modified race. But that's the weird thing now, because it seems to me the sport mods or whatever we want to call them, they're a little different than what they were back when you guys were doing that. It was a different car. We didn't quite have the technology that are in these, but I mean, E-Mods, I mean, maybe that would work. I mean, I don't know, but this is kind of what we're seeing here is that for Texas asphalt to survive, we're leaning on dirt. We need dirt. and that's, I mean, I don't want to say that's a painful reality, but it is. I mean, because what we're used to on asphalt is no longer there and not even close to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it goes back. I mean, everybody remembers the glory days of HMP and the Mandebach era. You go back and listen to the archives about our wonderful show we had with John Mandebach on about a year ago, I guess, or so now. But it had its heyday, and people want it to be successful again. Obviously, the guys and gals that are there supporting it want it to be successful. It's the last remaining pavement track in the state of Texas. It's the last remaining pavement track in the Southwest.
Yeah.
Really, if you think about it, if you're standing at HMP, the next closest racetrack is Mobile to the west or to the east.
Or Arizona.
Tucson to the west, and Lebanon, I-44 Speedway to the north. That's it, because without the Rev running, that doesn't count. So you're in a unique spot that you're in one of the next closest track to you is a minimum of 10 hours away. 12 if you count traffic on I-10 trying to get to Mobile and Pensacola. So unless, you got to have the people show up. It's no different than that at a dirt track. For any racetrack to stay open, there needs to be people in the grandstands, not just racers on the racetrack, but there needs to be the system itself needs to work. It means more to a racer than just to have their name up on that big screen TV, there on the infield. I love the big old screen. I love what it does, and it adds another layer of excitement to the racetrack. But the drivers have to show up and make it happen because and the fans too, because you need both sides of that gate for that place to stay open.
Yeah, and it's a great comment there about sponsorship. I mean, sponsorship cures a lot of woes. But the thing about it is, I mean, with sponsorship, I mean, if you go back and you really look at how these big sponsorships have been acquired, I mean, it's one of those things to where ABC medals, whatever, I'm making that up. They see what's happening on a positive trend, and they're like, okay, I want to invest some money in this. I want to be a part of this. I want to be a part of something that's growing. And where I think when it comes to the modifieds and the trucks in Texas, and even to a certain extent, the outlaws, is people that may be interested in investing, because that's what it is. I mean, you're not, you can spend money, but you want to spend it to where it's going to bring you some type of return on investment. I mean, if they look and they see 4 trucks and they see 5 modifieds and 3 of them crash in practice, I mean, it's like, I mean, why would I spend thousands of dollars there on something that I'm not going to grow it? I mean, I'm not going to grow it. I mean, they've tried to pay $10,000 on a truck race in Houston, and 16 came. But I get the logistics, and I get all of that. It's just we're in a bad place. We're in a tough place when it comes to that. I mean, you look at our Texas asphalt in the past. It was our drivers going to Florida. It was our drivers going to Pensacola. It was our drivers going to Mobile. It was our drivers going to Cordele. It was never those people coming to us. Even when we had Thunder Hill, San Antonio, Corpus, you may get them for an ASA race or an all-pro race, but they weren't beating the door down trying to get to the borders of Texas to come race here for pavement.
No, back in the heydays in the 80s and the 90s, they weren't coming.
Yeah,
Only guy that was coming from the Carolinas was Slick Yeomans. That's because all his cars were prepared, ready to go from Corpus. So that you can go back and listen to that show on the archive as well. But that I mean, it's always been that way. You've never had the return favor, if you will, of some of the out of state guys. I mean, you got guys that Ricky Moxley did it for a season there in Houston because he loved working with the promoter over there and loved the racing competition with his modified. You've seen a couple of guys do it. Ricky Moxley's the last guy I can think of off the top of my head that did it on a regular basis. Augie's come for a couple of times. Augie Grill, racing with the R&M install, Rick Polero connection there. So that, they tried to run the modified and mayhem race, and you got 2 extra modifieds there, out of state guys. And it was Augie and somebody else, and that was it. And so, they've tried. We know how long the drive is to go from Mobile to here and go to Pensacola to here, because we make that trek to go from here to Pensacola and Mobile. So it's, it's miles and miles of Texas, but that doesn't mean that these guys can't come and have some fun there in Houston.
Yeah, and to market the sport, I mean, yeah, drivers can only do a certain amount. And again, I mean, drivers, you market yourself. I mean, let them know where you're racing and what you do. I mean, that's really all you can do. But I mean, it's dollars and cents. I mean, that's all there is to it. And the bottom line comes to if the track or the promoter or whoever it is, if they don't have that capital, if they don't have it, you can't do it. And at the same time, if you don't have something that you can, if I've got a 78 Corvette Stingray that I can go out and market and I'm going to sell this, I'm probably going to get a bunch of offers, people wanting to buy it. But if I take my, 1995 Chevrolet GM truck out there that won't start, I'm probably not going to get people that want to bite on that. And that's the whole thing. It's got to be alluring. It's got to be something. And that's where you look at a lot of these racetracks like Pensacola. You look at those guys, and I say this with full respect to the Bryants. You look at their weekly show, it's not, when it comes to car count, it's about what we have here. But they've got that nest egg in December that fixes all the problems and takes care of everything and all the bad nights that they're going to have, whether it be a rain out, whether it be a low car count, and they still struggle. They still struggle to pay the bills. It's just really hard, and that's where Dirt has really kind of dove in right here, and they're able to do things to where it's 2 different environments. The tire conversation that we're having, these guys pay $1,600 for a set of tires, and then the Dirt guys buy them for $30 a piece. What the hell? It just doesn't make sense. It just does not make sense.
Just make sure that somebody missed the boat when it comes to reselling those tires.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Anyway, great conversation right there, man. See, there we go, Bobby. When I told you no content tonight, that's where those things come up, and boom, here we go with great conversation. Before we go any further, we do want to talk about all the folks that we have been mentioning that help make this program possible. And of course, one of our biggest supporters is On Demand Shirts. We're wearing the stuff. How about a word from those great folks?
Hey racers, Phil Whipple here again with the Revved Up Sports Show. For nearly 3 years now, you've heard me talking about our valued partners over at Generation Race Cars. In 2023, GRC built cars visited Victory Lane on 46 occasions, driven by 9 different drivers. This year, GRC drivers are picking up right where they left off, as young Christian Gaston has already won at Cannondale Speedway. Generation Race Cars, located in Springtown, Texas, continues to offer new chassis body combos all the way to turnkey sport mods and limited modifieds. All cars are built to the same high standards we have at GRC. Justin Long is committed to giving each and every customer the time they deserve, along with a commitment to bring quality into every build. When you're ready to order a new car for 2024, give the guys over at Generation Race Cars a call at 817-528-2947. That's 817-528-2947. Take your program to victory lane with Team GRC.
Yes, indeed, Memorial Day weekend. So obviously, you had all the big races and great short track conversation. Again, that's what this show is all about, and that's why we love interacting with all the folks. I mean, that's really the best part is that we get all the ideas. And with the attention to non-racing folks. I don't know how you do that. That's awful tough, Bobby, because it's like what people see. And this is where I go back to so often the importance of asphalt racing, pavement racing, of NASCAR, and the people that swear off NASCAR and say that that's a big part of what's going to get new people to your track, because it's like they go there and they're like, we've talked about it in the past at Kyle. It's like, okay, where's Jeff Gordon? Where's anybody here like Jeff Gordon? No, we do this on a local level, and so forth. But you need that. I mean, I would say market that. You don't have to agree with what they are doing, but mention that word. Let them. I saw on the HMP site that it says NASCAR style track. I like that. If you can drive traffic there and they see a stock car going in a circle, that means NASCAR to a new person.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think that it has to be we've seen it where remember back, I guess it's probably 15 years ago back, maybe even longer than that now, maybe 20, when USRA was running and they decided to say, hey, we'll add pit stops.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So everybody's like, oh, that's just going to cost more in tires. And they said, we don't give a damn. Doesn't matter. We're going to let them change tires because they're going to spend the money anyway, right? But you could tell the casual fan when they came through and them air guns fired up on pit road and they saw them teams changing those tires, they were like, oh, shit, this is just like what we see on TV. Yeah. And granted, was it the same thing? No, absolutely not. Well, I mean, I guess, it is and not, but that's a whole nother discussion for another show. But yeah, they were like, oh, wow, they changed tires like this too, just like Tony Stewart, Jeff Gordon, Dale Jr. do. Yeah, we do. Oh, that's neat. I didn't know they did that over here. We'll be back next week because it's like the stuff we see on TV.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I mean, it really is, because that's all that a new fan knows. I mean, that is all they know. They don't know any different. And I really think that correlates to dirt track racing as well. I mean, if you're one of these tracks, I mean, we talk about Cotton Bowl. I think Marianne and H do a really good job to where they kind of tap on some of those newer NASCAR fans and get them out there. And the thing is, once you get them there, cars going in a circle, going really fast, making a bunch of noise, it kind of matters not, in my opinion, what's going on. And that's where then your show. And I see that there, and that's another slippery slope when it comes to, do you want the show to run really fast or do you want the show to be slower? I personally, look, the meet and greets and all of that are great. I love the intent. I love all of that. But there are times when I'm like, man, we're losing them. I mean, I'm on that radio, Bobby. If I happen to have one, I'm like, we're losing them. We're losing them. We've been doing this for 35 minutes, and there's nothing happening. There's nothing happening. You and I talking to the drivers, that's great, but they went there to see racing. Even if it's single file, 4 or 5 cars, they went there to see that. They didn't go there to see cars parked and a couple of big mouths talking to guys.
Well, some people go there for that, though. I mean, I think there's a time and a place for a meet and greet. Not every single week.
Right.
Not every single week does there need to be a meet and greet. I think you do it 3 times a year. Opening night, maybe a close to opening night. Middle part of the season for your mid-season championship races. And then you do it towards the end of the year for your end of the season races, right? At that point, what the meet and greet serves its purpose on multiple fronts, because then you get to put a face with the driver. The number in the car can only do so much, even at a local level. There's a reason that people know what Jeff Gordon looks like, what Clint Boyer, Kevin Harvick, Ross Chastain, Chase Elliott, because they're on TV all the time without their race cars. The way that the meet and greet works. Remember when we did the opening one at HMP and somebody saw Mike Knotts, number 48, looked like the old Kyle Petty Hot Wheels car. Kid probably doesn't even know who the hell Kyle Petty is. Doesn't remember the Hot Wheel number 44 Pontiac like we do. All he said was that Mike Knotts, that's the best looking race car out here. And you know what? That's a Mike Knotts fan now. Yep. So the meet and greets serve their purpose to where there's a little bit of a chance to interact outside the box, where you're not just watching them going in circles. You get the hero cards. You can tell the drivers and teams get it because they bring the hero cards. They bring the Sharpies. They sign shirts. They sign hero cards. They sign babies. And so I think that becomes a unique way to make the meet and greet work. Does it need to happen all the time? No, absolutely not. Is it good to have? Hell yeah, it's good to have. But there are people that don't come for that and think it's useless. But, I think that there's a fine line between what people think is worthless and stuff that actually works.
Yeah.
Sometimes the show's too short, right? We've been to racetracks before where we started at 7, we were done at 9.
Yeah.
Right, because the show went good and maybe car count wasn't that high, right? But it's kind of like, it's just like, damn, there's got to be the happy medium somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. No, great point. Great point. Speaking of useless, Formula One in action this weekend. Max Verstappen didn't win. He didn't qualify at the front, and now he's pissed off. Doesn't like the track. I bet Kyle Larson could have passed on that at Monaco. I bet he could.
He might have done better than Checo.
Lewis Hamilton. Oh man, that thing got broken in half.
Yeah.
Ooh, God, that was horrible right there, man. And a delay. So I think that kind of set the tone, didn't it, for what was going to happen on Sunday, where it's like you get that big delay. I overslept. I mean, I was, I did the Saturday race at Corpus. Slept in a little bit. One of the pups wasn't feeling well, so I was up later, just kind of worried, being a mother the way that I do. And I'm like, oh my God. So I go and I look, and it's like, they haven't even run a lap yet. Wow. But hey, when it all comes down to it, Max doesn't win, and I think that's a good thing. And the funny thing is, you notice that Max, not that Formula One is fixed or anything, but Max is losing on the races that seem to have the bigger, kind of the bigger bullseye on them, it seems like.
Yeah, it's not fixed, but it's like when the light's shining bright, it's not shining as bright on the Red Bulls as it once was.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things to where, like, Miami, it was great to see McLaren back in victory lane, right? Just because Lando won that race. He outdueled Max Verstappen. I just think it's funny that a guy that wins by an average of 12 to 15 seconds a race is bitching about a race being boring because there's no passing.
Yeah.
Well, ain't no passing for the lead at most of these Formula One races. The action's pretty good from 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and then 10th, 11th, and 12th.
Yeah, if I'm ahead by fucking 30 seconds, I'm going to be loving it. You know what I mean? If you can't, yeah, and that kind of comes on the heels right there, where whoever made the comparison to where it's like, Kyle Larson is right there in that same conversation with Max Verstappen, and I'm like, what conversation is that? They're both champions. That's about the only thing that I will give them that they both are, because you put those dudes. I mean, Max Verstappen is dominating Formula One and everything that he's done. Kyle Larson dominates every damn thing that he does. Kalen, don't worry, my man. It's right here. That's why we tell people, grab a drink and chime in to the show. I mean, it makes the conversation better because you guys drive the show. I mean, that's really the good thing right there. But yeah, I mean, get off of that, Max. I mean, come on. That I was so disappointed to see that. Where it's like, it's boring, and then I heard Bobby. I heard some other people saying maybe you not only take Monaco out of the Memorial Day trio, take it off the schedule. Man, Formula One does that. I'll never watch again.
I remember the year that
anyway.
I remember the year that Monaco was like the weekend before, the weekend after Memorial Day. It felt so weird because Sky Sports said it best when they got done with their coverage. Now we didn't get to see it because the ESPN Sky Sports coverage went to regular commercials and regular ESPN programming. If you were watching the X conversation, they were showing it. They had a special Indy 500 broadcast on Sky Sports after the Formula One race was over.
Yeah.
And so the races play off each other, especially the NASCAR and IndyCar stuff, because of the fact that Kyle Larson was attempting to run both. They both were cross-promoting both races nonstop, more so than they have together in years. So the races play off each other. You heard the Sky Sports commentators talk about the upcoming Indianapolis 500, and they even would mention Kyle Larson by name. But they kept talking about it, and it's at the end of the day, it's the greatest day in racing, Monaco, Indy, and the Coke 600. It really doesn't get any better than that. That is the epitome of the best race day ever because you got all three races promoting. Did the Monaco race suck? Sure it did. But is there a more iconic racing scene, a racing shot than the cars running underneath that casino in that tunnel, coming out of that tunnel? That's one of the greatest racing, and it's been it doesn't matter what generation of Formula One car has done that. It just looks kick-ass when you see it on television. It's neat. When you see all the big-ass boats, the guy with rolling up in a super yacht and a Bugatti on the front of it. Like, it's just, that's what makes Monaco so great. Can they change it? Maybe. Can they do a little different? I don't know how much you can change the streets of Monaco to make it any better. But I mean, hell, it was just fun because it was Monaco, right? There's a reason that I could drink mimosas on Memorial Day morning. It's because I watched the Formula One race in Monaco and I feel like it deserves a couple of mimosas.
Well, and the other part of that is, Bobby, I was thinking about this yesterday. And again, the whole chronology of how the 600 came to be and everything. And the great thing is it's right there in the back pocket of NASCAR country in Charlotte and so forth, which we can have the conversation about that here in just a minute about what happened there. But think about this, if this would have worked out somehow to where and I'm just talking about the courses. I'm just talking about the racetracks. If this whole Memorial Day thing would have been Monaco in the morning, Darlington to end the day with some kind of 600-mile race with Indianapolis in the middle. That right there. I mean, that's the only thing that would make it better, but you don't change it. You don't change it. I mean, absolutely don't change it. But this whole thing about the races are boring and we can kind of move to Indianapolis. I mean, I don't care what happens, 4-hour delay. Indianapolis is never disappointing. I mean, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago to where it's like, well, it's only 34 cars. That was dramatic. One car missed and that was dramatic. But the Indy 500 is just, it's its own thing. I mean, it could be a standalone thing. It could be a standalone race with just everything that we saw and everything that you see every year. You never know what's coming. And it truly is. I mean, it really is. I'm sorry, race fans. It really is the best race in the world. I mean, it really is.
It's the most well-known, most well-received race in the world. You can go up to some random stranger and say, tell me the name of one motorsports race. They're going to say probably in this order. Indy 500, maybe say Daytona 500, and some of them now may say something about some kind of F1 race. But that's the race that everybody knows. That's because, I mean, that race was great. That was one of the better Indy 500s. I missed a good section of it because I was watching the opening ceremonies there for the Coke 600. Like I said, as an announcer and stuff that we have to get stuff right on big shows and different stuff like that, I like watching the pomp and circumstance to see how they do it. So it's kind of like, I mean, it was great. I think that I think Newgarden, not that you feel bad about winning the 500. There were some question marks over last year's win when they started it with no warm-up lap and just said it's green and white, go, right? I think there was some controversy about that. And I also think that there was no questions asked. I thought you got to see the old worldwide sports adage, the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, when you got to see the elation of Joseph Newgarden, got to see poor Pato O'Ward sitting there with his head down, crying. He dropped the F-bomb on TV. So they didn't apologize for that, which I thought was different, where they say, oh, the emotion, we apologize for the language. They didn't say anything. I mean, I think that it just kind of popped out, and that was just the raw emotion of that. I just think that race ended up being, it lived up to the hype and then lived up to the image that the Indy 500 wants it to be.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, and the thing is with Newgarden, and this is where I know a lot of folks that I've talked to in the past, is when I talk about the history of Indy and how special it is to me. I mean, it's it's not an American race anymore, and all this, that, and the other. You've got an American. I mean, the dude's from North Carolina, for crying out loud, just went back to back. So, I mean, there's that part, if you want to argue with that. I mean, you've got Roger Penske in the middle of this, Chip Ganassi. I mean, having those two teams, and, it's very much just like everything else. I mean, this is a Chevrolet and a Honda battle. And I think what was so cool, I mean, not cool for the people involved and affected by this, but was the fact that this race started and you had the Honda start falling out, and you're starting to wonder, okay, what's going to happen here? And Alex Rossi was my pick going into this race. And I really thought that with the confidence that he showed and with the speed and everything that he was doing there with Aero, that he might get that second win. But it's one of those things to where you wish that every race could be like this, because, and again, this is just because it's Indy and everything that goes into it. Every lap, it seems like, has you on the edge of your seat because there's always something going on. And that's where it's really weird, because you've got what you have in the morning at Monaco, then you've got all of that. And then where it's like, okay, NASCAR, and I always tweet this every year. Okay, NASCAR, how do you answer that? Because it's always been something really crazy. I mean, AJ Foyt, I mean, with the 14 car being in the mix, with what's his name?
Ferrucci.
Yeah, with Ferrucci. And then the other dude, God bless America, what's his name? Ray.
Stingray Rob.
Stingray Rob leading laps in this thing. I mean, when you have that happening right there, this was just a great storyline. Started 4 hours late and still delivered. And they found a way. And Bobby, biggest thing, everybody stuck around. Everybody came back.
I mean, I think we would too if we were there. I mean, I think we would have gone back.
Yeah, no doubt.
We need to start a GoFundMe so we can go to Indy next year.
And that's the thing. I mean, there are opportunities to where I could possibly go to Indy, but I don't want to go work. I want to go enjoy it. I want to go be a fan. I want to go do the Indy experience. At some point, I'll go work. That's fine. But I want to be a fan the first time that I get to go there. Then you got Charlotte. All this happens. You break it down. I mean, I wondered if either race was going to get done. I'm glad Indy did. I was hoping Charlotte would push to today to have that race. But, I mean, look, I support NASCAR. I'm a firm believer in NASCAR. I was just talking about how important they are. They shit the bed last night, dude. I'm sorry. They fucked up. I mean, they God, you could have finished that thing out.
They could have finished that thing out today. They're in their own backyard. Everybody said they slept in their own beds, right? The grind of being on the road, sleeping in your own bed. Run that bitch tomorrow or run that bitch today. There was no reason to end it. I get the humidity was there. It's a 600-mile race that had barely run 370-something miles before they called it. It was just past halfway. They didn't even make it to the third stage. I get that it was already running late tonight. That race, the weather ended up being a couple of hours late getting to Charlotte, because everything I cut you a couple of screenshots of the weather throughout the day. I said, hell, the 600 ain't going to run today either. And so that range was just a little further delayed. But man, they dropped the ball when they didn't try to finish running that race. It's the greatest day in racing. And we saw pictures. We knew people that were there that tweeted the pictures of the racetrack an hour after they cut loose. I think that was more of a TV decision, but it's like, I mean, we've watched races at 3:00 in the morning before. What's different? Run it today. There was no reason not to run it today.
Yeah, you've got nothing else happening. I mean, that's the whole thing where, I mean, there are times where I've thought that NASCAR had a race on Monday, but you can't mess up that 3-race thing. But it's like, yeah, I mean, push the thing out. I mean, I totally get. I understand the TV partners and all of that. I mean, so what was that? Because I didn't get to see it. That was a Fox race, right? On Big Fox.
They stuck around. I'll give Fox credit. They stuck around a lot because they ended up going through Race Hub, like some when it got to the rain delay. The guys did so much, and then they cut it to the Fox studio for about 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes of just a couple of driver interviews on Zoom back and forth. And then when they ran out of stuff to talk about in the studio, they went to Radioactive on Race Hub that we've seen a couple of times this week already about the best of Radioactive in Charlotte. After they did that, then they came back and Mike Joyce said, well, the rain stopped, but the humidity's here and NASCAR's called the race. And it was like, are you kidding me? Like, it was just like, you waited around for 2 hours after the rain delay. And don't get me wrong, it came a monsoon, just not as bad as it did at Wilkesboro. And then the drainage, I love the Twitter X post from RFK Racing. They said, we retweet this picture of this drain in turn 1 to make North Wilkesboro jealous. And it was a drain in turn number 1 that was just getting flooded with water, but it was still doing its thing. It was still working. Yeah. But for the fact that they called that race early after just a tick over 300 miles is a disgrace to all the fans that stuck around for that. Because that was almost a sellout at Charlotte, both in the grandstands and the infield. That place was packed. I hadn't seen a 600 packed that much in a hot minute.
And this is very much where I see folks, and again, just kind of following along, once everything was done that I was doing last night, just kind of reading there. And of course, you hone into the various Twitter or X posters and so forth that cover NASCAR. And it's like, reading some of that stuff. I mean, there are a couple of them that were like, drastically saying exactly what you're saying. Why do you call it? Run it tomorrow. I mean, figure out a way to get it done. But everybody else, kind of jumping in bed right there with them and all of that. And
a lot of people were towing the company line.
Of course. And you get that so much. I mean, that's a lot of that media. I mean, that's exactly what they do. I mean, that's all they do, as a matter of fact. But that's a whole thing to where you could have figured out a way to do this. And it is. I mean, it's just... I really wish that it would have worked out different, because it was in the scenario with Larson, with him being able to make it back. And hey, how about the run for Allgaier? I mean, that's kind of the one thing that's floating under the radar here. It's like, hell, that dude put it in the
car he's never been in. Yeah. Not just the 5 car, but the next gen car, and managed to get run. He ran in he was a lap down there earlier, and they got it fixed. And I think he was running 13th or 14th when they threw the red flag and get ready to put Kyle Larson in it. That was crazy.
And that's kind of one of those things to where it's like, I mean, if you're on that team, I mean, you look at that and it's like, oh, okay, do we take him out? Do we get him out of here? I mean, he's put it in a really good spot. I mean, like, I know there's a lot more to it. And with the Larson conversation, now the other thing is he shouldn't get to be in the playoffs. He shouldn't get a waiver. Right? I mean, all of this. He snubbed NASCAR to race in another series. Look,
NASCAR will give him a waiver. There's no way in hell NASCAR does not give him a waiver.
Rick Hendrick. I mean, who do you think was helping coordinate all this? Come on. And that's the conversation right there. This is where NASCAR kind of drives me crazy so often, to where you get, number one, this race getting nope, we're done. It's done. And this whole thing with the waiver thing. No, he shouldn't get a waiver. Those guys were hurt. No, two of them were suspended.
Yeah.
People seem to forget that part. He snubbed, he threw the boogers at NASCAR. And these are the folks that don't care about NASCAR, that suddenly care about NASCAR getting snubbed. Give me a break. I mean, it just gets old. I mean, it gets old all the time.
I mean, I think that he did the right thing by staying at Indy. I really do. I also think that if that was not his first IndyCar race, he doesn't lock the brakes up coming down the pit road and flat spot those tires either. Even if he runs a road course, right? I mean, he needed to run another oval, but that's right. The other oval he could have run was Texas Motor Speedway, and they took it off the schedule. That was, I think, the downfall there of Larson. I mean, did I expect a little bit more? Yes and no. I mean, I kind of expected a little bit more, but then when you see just that little misstep, how competitive that race really is, to me, the Indy race was more competitive than a normal IndyCar race, right? Because of the fact that Larson just screwed up once, right? and just hit the brake a little too hard, locked it up, and kind of flat spotted a tire. And he lost 15 spots and could never make it back up.
Yeah.
I mean, he made it 1 or 2 spots, but he got back into the late 20s and just could barely get back up to 18th with a car that was super fast. So that to me was it was one of the more competitive Indy 500s in this modern era. I guess we don't know what do we call the modern era of IndyCar? 2000 and up?
Yeah, man, I can't help every year that we have the 500, every year, obviously, where I go back to and I think, what would have happened if you didn't have the split? I mean, if you didn't have all the splits, I mean, it's like every year I think of the US 500 when they ran that at Michigan, when you had all that, where it was like only IRL had, 25 cars that were
going to wide start, and they went to turn 1 and wadded them all up.
Yeah, it's like only 7 other cars can get in here. It's like, man, that's where it gets crazy. But at the same time, this is where I go back to, and a great question right there. You read my mind. Sorry, I've got paper bags floating around here. Is this a time for IndyCar? Because now for IndyCar, what do you do now? You go to Detroit. And it's like, we used to talk on our radio show about it. Okay, great race. Now you're off for 3 weeks. Great race, everything that you have there. Now you go to Detroit, and Detroit has some history, and that's great. But man, Bobby, this is where I think, how about some TMS? And this is a new schedule. How about some TMS? How about some Michigan? How about some shit? I don't know. You pick the track. How about some Charlotte? I mean, let's get some ovals. I mean, I won't say Pocono because I know that takes lives, and that's a scary thought. But God bless America, man. IndyCar, you are head-to-head with Formula One. People see your cars, people see their cars, and they think the same thing. Go get on the ovals because those guys race left and right all the time. You do that too, except for Indy and a couple of ovals. Go race some ovals.
I mean, they need to.
Sorry.
I mean, the fact that Texas Motor Speedway is off the schedule is just still inconceivable to both of us. Not because it's one of our home tracks. It's because that track has been some of the highlight reels that you see on every open of every IndyCar race. They've had great racing there before. That's where you got AJ Foyt popping Ari Leyendyke in the face during the very first IndyCar race there at TMS that I was a part of way back in 1997. When you had that much history just thrown off to the side, I just don't think that it, and then when they would schedule TMS the last couple of years, they'd scheduled it against the 12 hours of Sebring or, something else stupid like that, to where the international drivers would pick Sebring that were all part of the World Endurance Championship racing. So, I mean, I think that I hope and really want to see TMS added back to the schedule. I think IndyCar needs more ovals, but they, right now with the hype of the Indy 500, it's great for Detroit. It's going to help sell tickets to Detroit, but is Detroit going to end up and having a great race? I hope so. But chances are it's just going to be another, let's say, lackluster finish for an IndyCar race.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the whole thing. And it really is. I mean, it's always how do you build that momentum? And yeah. So
how do you put lightning in the bottle twice?
I know, man. And that's the unfortunate thing. And I do totally get, I do get the fact. Because it is, I mean, there's such a bullseye on safety right now, and IndyCars on ovals. I mean, it's a scary thing, and to watch those guys racing yesterday, I mean, you can't help but hold your breath, BC, watching them on TV, because when they start fanning out, they're like going 4 wide into a corner, and you think about that racetrack, it's like, but there is no way. There's no way they're going to get out of there. And how many people have we seen, that lose their lives in those crashes? So, I mean, and this is where we go back to, for anybody that says that race car drivers lack anything, bullshit. Go watch a 500 and you will learn different.
The best thing about the Indy 500 that I was like thinking about, that even when the race was over, was like, man, that was close racing. I was like, that next gen car at Indy's got a chance to really, really kick ass if they do it right.
I think it does.
If they really do it right, I think they need to do an aero test at Indy, not a tire test. They need to do an aero test at Indy. You need to put your best foot forward for the 20th. What is it going to be? The 20th or 30th anniversary? 30th anniversary of the Brickyard 400. Because that's right. The first one was 1994. 30th anniversary of the Brickyard 400. They need to put on one hell of a show, because they won't be able to live up to the hype that the Indy 500 just laid the smackdown on.
That's right. That's exactly right. Todd Horton, wait until the IndyCar hybrid. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, evolution. I mean, and that's something that you can't avoid. It's like getting old, paying taxes, all of that stuff. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And I think the thing is, I mean, we're going to see this with NASCAR as well, much to the chagrin of people that they're going to have to do this. They're going to have to do this. But man, get those Indy cars on ovals. My goodness. And here's the other part of it. I mean, I know like we've lost so many drivers, but now with aero screens and all the different safety innovations, I think that it helps. They're just so cool to watch on ovals, dude.
That's what Jimmy Johnson. That's how Jimmy Johnson convinced his wife to let him run on ovals, aero screens, and safer barriers.
Yep. By the way, great job, Jimmy Johnson, yesterday on TV. And Danica Patrick, she is very good on TV as well. Bobby, I do want to announce this, and this is from Owen Pittman. So we're kind of going back to our Texas stuff here as we were talking about our local racing earlier. Sorry, let me do a little thing here with the chat. This is from Owen Pittman, obviously promoter there at Texana Raceway Park. Texana will be canceling this Friday, May 31st, due to area high school graduations. Apparently, there are, I don't know, 3 or 4 right there, kind of in that cluster right there along that neighborhood. So canceling that show on the 31st. We'll be back in action on June the 8th with Stems Modifieds. So if you were planning to make your way out to Texana like you were, Bobby, don't go. If you go, you're going to have the best seat in the house.
Might be the only seat in the house.
Only seat in the house right there. So that's kind of news right there. But yeah, that wraps up our Memorial Day weekend extravaganza there with all the racing we had around here and all the big stuff. And time to move on. I mean, we're in the dog days of summer. Now we go and let's watch how everything shakes out because we got the big 3 out of the way.
The big 3 out of the way, and it's going to be it's going to be an interesting summer for Formula One. Going to be the Indy momentum that they get every year. Take it into Detroit, take it into a couple of different races, and then, I mean, couldn't even tell you where NASCAR's running this week. Where are they running? Kansas? No, they already ran Kansas. Where are they running? Don't know, right? I know that NBC. I know they run Nashville in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And then they switched to NBC coverage. I know Sonoma's in a couple of weeks. I think there's only 1 or 2 more races on Fox.
Yeah.
Before you get to the mid part of the summer. So yeah, it's like that tells you how good NASCAR's been in the last couple of days. Is everybody's like, where are they racing next? Hell, I don't know.
Well, I saw a lot of folks bitching about the Fox thing. Yeah, obviously that it was TV driven last night, which, we don't know, but that seems to be the thought. I did see some people saying that NBC, too many commercials during the Indy 500. That's kind of hard to do when you can kind of front load when you got 4 hours to kill. But hey, streaming is coming, guys. For all the frustrations that you have over satellite and cable TV and all of that stuff, you get to stream it here in a few years, and that'll fix everything.
Yeah, everybody's going to be waking. If you think that you get to see NFL with no commercials on Amazon Prime, you're full of it. If you think you're going to go watch Monday Night Raw on Netflix and not see any commercials, you're full of it. These places pay millions of dollars for these TV sports rights. And so I think that there's going to be commercials. What is it? NBC used to stand for nothing but commercials. And then TNT was terrible NASCAR television back, in the early 2000s.
Yep.
So hopefully it won't be the same way, but it's, a sad deal about Texana, but I understand it. With the local graduations, that's the one drawback to a small town racetrack is stuff like weddings and graduations will kill your front gate and probably even a lot of your back gate too. So that has a lot to do with it. So it's, I guess I'll just be a 1-day show there, ready for the Palace of Power with the trackside interviews. Maybe you'll see me up on the big screen. Who knows?
Well, and that's why so many times we talk about here in Texas to where it's like when it comes to short track racing, you get to that high school football part, and that's where it gets really hard. I mean, you like the race ranch. I mean, you're filling the stands right now, but when Flower Bluff and Cal Allen and all of them start playing, but of course that's a Friday show. But still, I mean, things are happening on Saturdays, with cross country and all that. And that's a Texas thing, guys. If you're checking in on outside of our territory right here in Texas, when all of that stuff starts, woo! Our racing schedules in Texas used to revolve around high school football. Remember, Bobby? It quit when you started high school football in September. No more racing. No more racing. Don't even try it.
Well, think about it when we were kids, man. Speedorama and San Antonio and all them opened up. They went from Memorial Day to Labor Day every single weekend in between. Remember when they first ran Oktoberfest in October? in San Antonio, and you were like, what the hell is this, racing in October? What? Now we race into November almost all year long. So it's crazy to see the evolution of the racing just in the last 25, 30 years.
Yep, absolutely. Great program tonight. Thank you all for the chats. Thank you all for the conversation. Man, really cool. Really cool. Love to talk about Indy and Formula One and NASCAR. Glad that we have folks that actually want to converse about that. So thank you all for being a part of that. And Owen checks in, so he acknowledges that'll be posted and out to the masses here for folks that didn't catch it here. Rest of the week, my man. So now you got a 1-day show. Always fun to start work on a Tuesday.
Yeah, a little bit. I've actually been working. I was out of the office a couple of days last week, so I had a little bit of work to do over the weekend. And so getting ready, geared up. I already got some stuff lined up for the rest of the week, just trying to stay ahead of the game. And when you try to stay ahead of the curve, it makes the tidal wave not so bad. Get to surf the wave a little bit.
There it is. That's what I'm talking about. All right, you guys, thanks for checking in. # Real Race Talk, RevvedUpSportsShow.com. Check us out, and we'll do it again next Monday, breaking down everything that was the week of short track racing. And
wait. We forgot about the fight. The fine for the fight.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, $75,000 to Ricky.
Too much. For as much as that was on social media, way too damn much money. 25 grand tops.
I wouldn't even fine him. I mean, it's an exhibition race. Why do you even fine him? I mean, especially when you're running the tape over and over. I mean, again,
Chase, if you can go to YouTube and watch the Chase Elliott post-race deal at the All-Star race, or I guess it was pre-race for the 600, when Bob Pockers tells him how much it was, and Chase Elliott is speechless, going, "Wow, that's a lot of money for something they've been promoting week over week, so day after day, time after time." So you know what? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was a bit much, but I didn't mean to cut you off, but we forgot to talk about it. So
no, that's totally good. And I do like how on Saturday, I think it was, when they did the announcer, the racer broadcast, whatever. By the way, I put this on Twitter. I would love to see NFL guys, NBA, NHL, baseball. I would love to see them try to do what those NASCAR guys do, man. Brad Keselowski in the studio, polished. Logano, that hadn't done play-by-play, great.
Did pretty good. Not on the Harvick level. Harvick was damn good at play-by-play. But he did, be his first and only time doing it. And kudos to all those guys.
Yeah. And I'm here to tell you, because I have seen folks who are like, they're no good. You try it. I mean, it's one thing, like what Bobby and I do, where you're doing a local thing, and if you're streaming, whatever. But when somebody's telling you something, lineup coming, we're going to break, go to the pits. I mean, all this stuff. It's like, what? I mean,
how do we do all that all at the same time?
Yeah, I remember the first time that I had to do that, and I hear somebody in my ear, and it was, Tony Stevens, my man. It was, we're getting ready for the race, and we're building it up, and I'm like, okay, here's the starting lineup, and all I hear is, no, the graphic's not ready. I'm like, oh shit. So yeah, it's a hell of a lot harder than it looks. So yeah, I applaud those guys.
Texana stuff's actually already posted 3 minutes ago. Texana Raceway Park Facebook already updated, showing it's canceled.
There it is. Don't go Friday. Go June the 8th. That'll be a great show coming up. All right, you guys, have a great week. We'll do it again on Monday. # Real Race Talk. Again, if you guys want to reach out to us from around the country and you don't want to message the Facebook page, RevvedUpSportsShow@gmail.com. All right, Bobby, have a great rest of the week, my man. We'll do it again on Monday.
All right, everybody. Peace out. Good week.
You got it. Y'all take care.